Gamescom is upon us, and with that, a whole host of new Monster Hunter Wilds info. We got a brand new trailer, updates to the website, a new PlayStation blog, and the info drops just keep coming. So today I'm going to break down and deep dive into all of that info, go over everything they've revealed so far, and some things you might have missed. So let's go ahead and get into it. Together with other members of the Research Commission, we follow the river from the Windward Plains to find ourselves in a brand new biome, the verdant Scarlet Forest with its towering trees and abundant crimson waters. This brand new locale is also home to a brand new monster, a new Temnoceran, Lalabarina. Tracking its fallen florets, you'll soon find yourself in its red, silky nest. Though normally covered in white hair, its thorax has a secret as beautiful as it is deadly. This rose-like thorax is able to scatter florets which linger and drift around the environment and cause paralysis buildup when touched. Presumably, its rose gets its scarlet color from the waters in which it calls home, and its elegant spinning attacks are very reminiscent of a ballerina. This monster's armor set can be seen in the Charge Blade weapon trailer, whose rose and filigree motif had been correctly theorized to be from a new Temnoceran. During the trailer, we also get a look at a new presumably important NPC, Olivia, and her loyal Palico Athos. She's seen fighting alongside us using an awesome-looking hammer, and I have to imagine that companion NPC hunters, or at least who you get to hunt along with you, is tied to story progression. And speaking of NPCs, we got some new info on multiplayer. After a quest begins, you can send out an SOS flare to call upon 3 hunters from all over the world to assist you on a hunt. But in addition to online multiplayer, you can also call NPC support hunters to enjoy the fun of a hunting party, even when you're playing single player. Support hunters will automatically join the hunting party if a certain amount of time passes after using an SOS flare and enough players cannot be found. During multiplayer, you can set the maximum number of players to call and turn off support hunters at the quest counter using settings like only other players and only support hunters. So of course, there's a couple of really interesting things to note here. One is, of course, we already knew that you could use NPCs with an SOS flare, but it looks like this info confirms that not only can you call upon just random hunters, but you can actually call specific named NPCs. In that way, it's probably very much like Sunbreak's follower system. I also like that you can set the maximum number of players to call, so even if you are using NPCs, you can do it as just a duo hunt with you and your Palicos, or even 3 if you wanted. They also might let you set options such as so many human players and so many NPC players, so you can split the group how you want. But another really interesting thing to note here is that they do mention a quest counter. Now, they haven't dived in too much to how exactly the quest system works, and we weren't even sure if there's going to be any sort of like quest board or quest counter with which to take quest from, and it might just be an option in your menu. But in the very least for multiplayer, and even though I don't think we see it in the trailer, it does seem like there's a quest counter confirmed. Now, whether that means we get some sort of gathering hub area or whether it's just somewhere in the town, who knows? It's also really looking like the Palico system in this one works pretty much like it does in World, in that unlike Rise and Sunbreak, if you started with those games, you don't just hire on a bunch of Palicos and fire them as you need space, or hire different ones depending on what skills you need, but you'll have a specific companion that you create alongside your character to follow along with you on your journey. And between the two games, I much prefer World's Palico system, where you have one specific Palico that grows and follows along beside you. I think it's much more interesting to watch him grow, and I think it builds a much deeper kind of emotional connection with your Palico than you get in a game like Risebreak, where you can hire and fire them kind of willy-nilly, and their progression, it seems to be more limited than it is in something like World, where you get all your different gadgets and things like that. So, between the two, much prefer the World system of a single partner Palico. From there, we make our way to the interim camp, where we get a good look at what facilities are available to us. To me, this looks something like a grocery store where we buy specific ingredients for cooking. You can also see the little cooking cat here in the corner. I imagine, kind of like in World, you can place orders for things like cooked meat, jerky, etc. that you'll pick up at a later time after you get back from a quest. Also important to note here is that we don't actually see any sort of canteen. We don't see any specific facility where you can sit and eat. The grocery store area doesn't have any chairs. There's no table. Even when you go to your camp, which we'll explore a little bit later, there's nothing like you see in Worlds where you have a little table and chairs and an area to sit there and eat your meal. All of this leads me to believe that cooking, that is manually cooking from your hunter, or potentially these kind of placed orders through the grocer or maybe your Palico, are going to be a deep and integral part of the gameplay where you have to bring along ingredients with you, and those ingredients that you have available are going to really depend on where you've been, what you've been hunting, what you've gathered, as opposed to something like World where you find a specific ingredient and then it's just available from that point onward, even though there were a few that rotated kind of in and out. So if you really want something like Moxie or Good Luck or something like that, you might have to really work for it to get those ingredients. At the same time, using ingredients like that, you can probably pretty much guarantee the availability of something you really specifically want, which will be great for things like gunners or people who want better stamina management, all kinds of options like that. Also, the past few games, you really didn't need to bust out the barbecue spit, even though it was something that you used fairly often in the early games. So I think this is a really welcome change, at least for me. I love to see that you're bringing back the barbecue. We're going to be making our own meals and managing all of those buffs, and it is going to be oh so tasty. Another thing to note here is that we do see a little wing drake off to the side, though since we have the SEIKRET 2, I don't know if it's going to be used for all of the fast travel, but in the very least, something like Zora Magdaros where you can use them to get onto higher surfaces, or things like that, but regardless, there is a tame wing drake in the camp. We also see the provisions, where you'll buy items to take out on your hunt. We see a main tent where you can meet with members of the Research Commission. We also see the forge, which, let's be honest, is the most important part. Moving on from the interim camp, we enter Kunafa, the Windsong village. Kunafa is known as the home of the SEIKRETS, and here we get perhaps the most important thing that we see in the entire trailer: a baby SEIKRET. And especially since they've confirmed we get to see some of the endemic life grow from baby to adulthood, it seems to me like maybe, just maybe, we get to watch this little guy grow up as well. Another interesting thing here is that we do get a look at the SEIKRET stables, which, by the way, called it, but the actual important piece here is that there are 4 SEIKRETS. And if you're in multiplayer, you're going along with 4 hunters. Now this could just be coincidence, but I wonder if everybody's in Kunafa, if these stables contain the 4 SEIKRETS of the 4 hunters, so you can go and take a look at them there. And I wonder if there'll be less than 4 if there's not 4 hunters in the village. That would just be a nice little detail, right? Also, we've been wondering if there's still 16-player lobbies like in Worlds, and if all these little SEIKRET stable predictions line up, there is only room for 4, not 16. Which makes sense to me. I don't know how they would have 16 players running around this world, but limit the quest to 4 people. So I think, personally, there's only going to be 4 hunters in your world. That is, assuming you're playing with 3 other human players. In addition to raising SEIKRETS, we know that Kunafa is famous for its cheese. We also know that you can trade for said cheese to use in cooking. Again, we get back to how important cooking and ingredient management seems to be in this game, which I'm a big fan of personally. On the website, they also say areas contain settlements inhabited by the locals and shaped by the environment. So I feel like it's a safe bet that Kunafa is not the only village we're going to see along the way. Our serene tour of the village gets interrupted by the incoming sand tide. Now, each hunting locale features an environment with 2 dynamically changing identities, as well as a transitional period that will shift the environment between the 2. During the harsh fallow period, hungry predators roam the scarce landscape desperate for food, resulting in an aggressive and dangerous behavior. This will typically be followed by a locale's inclemency, a harsh ecological event which can drastically alter the ecosystem. Many dangerous apex monsters use their formidable strength to reign supreme during these harsh times. In the Windward Plains, this inclemency period is known as the Sand Tide, where swirling sandstorms and savage lightning conceal the apex monster, Raydal. We'll get to him in just a second, but following the inclemency, the land is again teeming with abundant life as we enter the period of plenty. Raydal is the apex predator of the Windward Plains, and we've seen him before. This is the monster shrouded in lightning and shadow that we saw in one of the earlier trailers, and who the community lovingly named Thor Magala. We get a great look at him in the trailer, along with some official renders on the website. This guy is looking awesome. There's also this moment where he misses the hunter with a lightning attack and it strikes the sand instead and creates all of these glass shards that stick out. Just the sheer level of detail and all just the little things that are put into this game to make it feel really alive just continues to amaze. Everything from the environment to the villages to the way monsters behave, everything about it just really brings the world to life. You can really feel this living, breathing ecosystem around you, even more than you could in World. They are doubling down on one of the biggest qualities I think sets Monster Hunter apart from other games, and that's really just this living, breathing world and this environment that you can really get immersed into. I'm sure to go along with this, and so we can really learn to appreciate all the tiny details that they put into it, we'll get quests like World where you have to go through and either capture certain endemic life or take pictures, things like that. Things that are different from your normal hunting quests, and for me are a welcome sort of side quest where I can really just take it slow, take in all of the details, and really learn to appreciate the world that they built. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. I know not everybody was a huge fan of those missions, but I thought they were fun, and if you really didn't like them, you didn't have to do them. It's a great optional system that you didn't have to partake in at all if you really just wanted to grab your hammer and go out and beat monster face. But again, have you seen the baby SEIKRET? How do you not just want to sit there with your camera and just take pictures of it all day? That's the first day of gameplay, is just hanging out at the stables, doing a photo op with baby SEIKRET. But during those periods of downtime where you're not taking pictures of baby SEIKRET, you can go on expeditions. Expeditions can now be undertaken with a number of objectives in mind. Additionally, any monster currently in the area can be targeted at any time in order to start a new quest. There's a note that some monsters can't be targeted due to progression or other certain circumstances. And here's a place they don't really go into a whole lot of detail. Now, whether that means that the monster is simply not there, in that you haven't gotten far enough in the storyline to unlock said monster, or if there's certain monsters that are out in the field but attacking them doesn't generate a quest, it's probably kind of a mixed bag of both. But it'd be an interesting thing for them to expand on a little bit farther, as there's a lot of room for interpretation here. We also get our first look at pop-up camps. A set number of pop-up camps can be set in each area. Pop-up camps let you manage your items and equipment, serve as a fast travel destination and a place to start new quests, and can be used as a return point after fainting. So there's a couple of things to note here. One is that they have confirmed camps can be destroyed and that there's more safe and dangerous locations you can put them, though they haven't given us the specifics on exactly how that system works. We also knew that you could use them as fast travel destinations, but what's interesting is it is a place to start new quests. Now to me, that means, unlike what I was thinking before, where you could just bring up a menu and start or stop a quest at will, it does seem like there are specific spots, the pop-up camps, your main major camp, probably the villages, where you can specifically start quests. On the flip side of that, we do know that you can hunt a monster out in an expedition, and when you start attacking it, you can start a quest as well. So I wonder if the expedition quests are just that, and it's specifically tied to the expedition. You might get some bonus rewards, something like that, but that it doesn't actually progress your mainline story quests. So something akin to World's expedition system as well, where you could, hunt down a specific monster and get some bonus materials from it, but it wasn't a main assigned quest. It wasn't even one of your optional quests from the board. So I think that's the system that we have here. I think you'll have to actually go through your handler and your camps to take on main assignment quests, optional quests, things like that, while your expedition quests are just a kind of separate thing, so you get the extra quest rewards for hunting down specific monsters. Again, there's a lot of room for interpretation here. A lot of this is sort of just me theorizing it, but all of the info that we have so far leads me to believe that that is the case. We also get a great look at sneak attacks and mantles. Again, the only mantle that they've shown so far is the ghillie mantle, and we see a sneak attack using it here, and just like in World, it does auto break once you attack. Mantles are something I'm a little bit torn on. I like the idea of having this kind of customized secondary equipment slot, and you can choose your mantle depending on the needs of your weapon or the quest, things like thunderproof mantle so you don't get one shot by an early Kirin. Something like that I think is a great idea. But in World, there obviously were some problematic mantles, especially the temporal mantle, which just auto-evaded anything while you were wearing it. The Rocksteady mantle also had some issues, but at least with that one, if you ignored your health bar, or if you were just fighting something really strong, you could still be damaged through it, you could still be one-shot, and it was a fairly short duration. So I'm not against the return of mantles by any means, and we did know it was happening, but I do hope they tweak the system a little bit and are just very mindful of what mantles they give us. We also get a good look at the return of Wrath of Meow, along with hearing our Palico speak again. And I've talked about that in previous videos. Again, let me know if you want me to break it down kind of specifically. But I, for one, am happy the Palicos finally have voiced lines. I'm hoping that there's a lot of good voice options to make them sound a little more palico-y and a little less human. But again, I'm excited about it, but if you hate it, again, there is an option to turn them back to the old Monster Hunter kind of palico meows and noises that you're used to. We get a good look at an interesting longsword attack here, where you get these continuing red slashes even though he's not actually swinging his sword. And we saw a little bit of this in the longsword reveal. My guess is that these get added on as kind of extra damage once you fully charge that spirit gauge. So maybe this is the fully charged kind of spirit round slash. Again, we'll have to wait to find out the specifics, but there's going to be a ton of actual hands-on gameplay during Gamescom, so we should know real soon. Here we see the SNS actually do a power clash. They've also updated the website a bit. It says, Power Clash, a struggle between hunter and monster that occurs when blocking certain attacks. Succeeding in pushing the monster back will knock it off balance, giving you an opening to attack. So, theory confirmed, I called it, power clashes are only weapons that can block. And much like mounting the monster, the animation where you're power clashing opens up that monster for other hunters to attack it, and then if you're successful, you're able to knock it off balance and really punish it then as well. But don't feel too bad if you use a weapon that can't block. They've also mentioned another type of attack called offset attacks. Hitting a monster with certain attacks as it is attacking will cause the attacks to clash, knocking the monster off balance. Offset attacks can also be followed up with powerful unique attacks. Now what's interesting here is it's attack specific, only certain attacks will do it. We have seen the Greatsword do it, that uppercut move that it does on Doshiguma, that's an offset attack. Also worth noting that it doesn't tell us what weapons get offset attacks, only that certain attacks will do it. I assume that each weapon will get one, but we don't actually know that. So maybe the offset attacks is a way to kind of compensate for the weapons that can't do clash attacks. That being said, we know the Greatsword can do both. And we don't know if something like the bowgun can do offset attacks at all, since it has pretty limited physical attacks, though I'm pretty sure the heavy bowgun can clash. Maybe they'll give the light bowgun an offset attack. Maybe that thing where you just go up and kind of swing your gun at the monster, maybe you can offset with that. That would be a nice little addition. We also get a close-up view of this monster that I assume fills the role of something like a Kestodon, but regardless, the villagers use it to pull their carts. You will also see them wandering around the windswept plains in certain footage. I also like how it shows us just the interactions of the actual villagers with the environment, with the monsters, going out, collecting resources, collecting water, things like that. Again, it really just builds upon this living, breathing environment where it isn't just the hunter that goes out in the field. That being said, a couple of the moments like this do show the hunter off in the background, so is this the precursor to more escort quests? Probably. I don't think we'll get too many, but I do expect the return of both escort quest and gathering quest, which I know all you vets out there are just such a big fan of. But gathering resources is a big part of gameplay, and somebody somewhere has to teach all these new players to actually stop at the mining point and gather their ore and not just run face first into the monster. Rounding out the trailer, and an important reason we actually stick around past the credits, both in movies and in trailers, we get a look at the hunter cooking, and man, they made the food in this one look delicious. Again, apart from the little pop-up stool the hunter is sitting on while cooking, we don't see any actual table or chairs, canteen, anything like that. And another interesting thing to note is once he cooks it, it's actually separated into 6 individual, presumably well-done steaks. Which leads me to think that you no longer can just cook 1 steak at a time, but you can probably cook 6 at least. Which if they're making cooking a new big part of gameplay, I think is an important change. But that is going to wrap up all of the new things we've seen on opening night prior to getting some hands-on gameplay footage. So let me know in the comments what you love, what you hate, and if you can't think of anything at all and are just overwhelmed, just comment Baby Secret. All the sources I pulled info from will be listed in the description. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel for more Monster Hunter Wilds info. And if you really enjoyed the video, please consider supporting the channel as a member. It means a lot. As Gamescom progresses, there is sure to be tons of new Wilds info on the way, and I will be here to cover it all for you, but until next time, happy hunting!